Color trade blocks. This is not a cosmetic setting. It determines if nations can declare war on you and how much revenue your nation produces each day. There are two important color trade blocks to remember: beige and your alliance's color. You are only allowed to be on beige for a limited amount of time at the start of the game. However, you will also be moved to beige for 2 days when you lose wars. It stacks. Whilst your nation is beige, other nations cannot declare war on it. Alliances and their members choose to stay on the same color trade block. If members of an alliance do not share the alliance's color, they cannot be taxed, and they will not receive the revenue bonus each color trade block provides. You can see how high the revenue bonus is on the leaderboards page. Advice for new players: remain on beige for as long as you can. It provides a lot of bonus revenue and prevents nations and alliances from raiding you until you're prepared. If you run out of time on beige and have not joined an alliance, then join one of the least profitable colors. It may seem counterproductive to get a war bonus, but the larger alliances will send nations to attack you if you join their color trade block. If you're just here for the basics, that's everything. If you want to know more about why color trade blocks are important in politics and war, then keep listening. What is a color trade block? For most players, it is simply a primary color that appears in a small box on your nation and alliance page. For the economic department, it is a source of revenue that must be maintained and a reflection of their success. And finally, for the military department, it is a territory they can capture and monopolize. Why does the economic department care? Color trade blocks have changed a lot, but the most recent iteration is based on average nation revenue and the total number of nations on a color. Increasing the revenue of everyone on a color, or reducing the number of nations on a color, will raise the bonus. It caps out at 900,000. But the economic department isn't thinking about 900,000. They're thinking of how much the alliance benefits as a whole, and for an alliance with 100 members, that's an extra 90 million a day. If they can max the bonus for a month, that's 2.7 billion, and if they can max it for a year, that's 32.4 billion. Suddenly, it makes a lot of sense why the big alliances go to war with one another to keep the bonus high. The cost of war only needs to be less than the extra profit they earn from maintaining the monopoly. The military department tends to act on behalf of the economic department in respect to color trade blocks. But they do have a secondary motivation that stems from history: the origin of color trade blocks. Color trade blocks originated in another game named Cybernations, and there were more political implications in that system. Members of a color trade block could elect senators that could then embargo nations on behalf of that whole block, preventing them from trading and receiving aid. Color trade blocks cannot do this in politics and war, but their legacy and traditions have been passed down by players and alliances that exist in both games. Alliances treat color trade blocks as more than just bonuses, and do not want to share them with adversaries even if it's mutually beneficial. Now that you understand color trade blocks, let's talk about some of the interesting things that have happened with them. What are the most famous color trade blocks? The three most prominent color trade blocks in politics and war are green, maroon, and red. Green is controlled by the Syndicate, and shared with some of the other largest alliances in the game. Green has also been the most profitable color trade block for the past few years, primarily because of its security and the Syndicate's willingness to attack anyone that joins. Maroon is loosely controlled by Camelot, and its prominence stems from their long-standing defense of it and the duration of its name, Camelot the Kingdom on Maroon. Most color trade blocks change their names after 6 months, but Maroon has remained consistent for more than 3 years. Red is controlled by the New Pacific Order in Cybernations, and was controlled by them in politics and war. Color trade blocks tend to be controlled by a handful of alliances. That's normal. But Red was controlled by only one alliance, and it was a testament to their military strength. Colonization. This is still a video about a browser game. Early in politics and war's history, 2014 early, then the color trade blocks worked very differently, but still provided a larger bonus to colors with less nations on them. One of the largest alliances of the day was VOC, and they controlled Orange. Yet because Orange had a lot of nations, they were never able to get the highest bonus. They eventually thought of an ingenious solution, creating a colony alliance on another color. Orange's bonus would go up from the nations leaving, and the nations who left would get a larger bonus on the other color. Other alliances began imitating their strategy, and a colonial era began for the great powers of politics and war. The most notable colony to have existed was the Genius Corp, a VOC colony that grew larger than the original alliance. At the height of the colonial era, more than half of the top 20 alliances were colonies. The colonial era finally ended when the admin reversed the color trade block mechanics to reward colors with the most nations on them. On the topic of color colonies, it would be remiss of me not to mention Polaris, once known as the New Polar Order. In the early days of Cybernations, the New Pacific Order conquered and colonized one of their enemies, replacing them with the New Polar Order, which was meant to control blue just as they controlled red. The New Polar Order was a junior partner to the New Pacific Order, until a leadership dispute led to civil war. Whilst little of that era and conflict remain, there is some significance in them remaining a blue alliance, as they were intended to be all that time ago. Color trade blocks are fascinating, since they are one of the few game mechanics designed to inspire wars, and I hope they continue to develop politically in interesting ways.